Thank you, General Dikona, for coming to the podcast. A couple of things that Ajit and I want to discuss with you. But first, of course, because everything is so topical these days, we'll begin with today's news. I think I'll let Ajit explain as to what happened here. And if you could tell me about this, about what our adversary targets and how we respond to it.
Pakistan Army has no legitimate targets to strike inside India, nor does it have the courage or capability to stand up to Indian armed forces face to face. Hence, it uses terrorism as a national policy and resorts to unmanned aerial weapons launched from its own soil. Drones and long-range missiles were launched and fired from his own territory, which were his mainstay. Indian military installations, civilian population centers, including innocent ladies and children, were also not spared and were considered as legitimate targets by the Pakistan military. He has even targeted religious places specifically, a case in point being the Golden Temple located in Amritsar, which is internationally renowned and a place of faith for everybody. It saw a surfeit of drone and missile attacks, which were thwarted bravely by our Army AD gunners. The Indian Armed Forces and Army Air Defence gunners will continue to defeat all his designs and thwart all aerial threats always. Thank you.
Sir, this was the GOC 15 Infantry Div in Amritsar, and we had interviewed him yesterday, and we were told that how the Army Air Defence thwarted all the missile attacks and drone attacks on the Golden Temple specifically, along with the other places that they had targeted. So this is a big feat, sir. Like you have been, like the Army Air Defence has been the main obstacle between Indian cities and important places, and the Army Air Defence has thwarted all the major attacks that took place on our cities. So,
well, it's very interesting that you bring this out as what has happened yesterday. But fortunately, we visualized what he was capable of doing, and hence realizing that he would target it because he had no legitimate targets across the border.
Yes, explain this to people who don't understand what legitimate targets are, because we saw the soundbite. India at this stage, the legitimate targets were the terror bases.
Yeah.
So what does legitimate target for Pakistan mean?
So he had no legitimate targets. So in order for him to, he was more interested in creating confusion, chaos internally, and hence we visualized that he would target our civil population and our religious places of fame. And hence it is very nice, while only Karthik Shashadri has only covered one part of the story, it was very nice that the head Granthi of the Golden Temple allowed us to deploy our guns. And it is possibly for the first time in maybe many, many years where they switched off the Golden Temple lights for the first time, so that we could see the drone coming. I think that's what, the Golden Temple hierarchy realized there was possibly a threat when it was explained to them. They allowed us to deploy guns to secure to protect a national monument of international fame, which is visited by so many hundreds and thousands of people every day. And hence these guns were deployed and the Golden Temple lights were switched off so that we could clearly visualize the drones as they were coming in. And that gave us a greater clarity in the sky, because as and when you saw the light, you knew what to engage. So
also, we've come, like you're saying, that the lights were switched off by the Granthis and by the management of the Golden Temple. We've come a long way since 1984, and all that propaganda that the so-called Khalistanis do outside of India, because in India nobody believes it, but outside of India about our Sikh places of worship. Look at the faith they have in the Indian Armed Forces and how they stood cheek by jowl and as one team to defend the Harmandir Sahib.
Yeah. It's amazing to know that, in all our border towns, not to take it away from the rest of India, but in our border towns, retired ex-servicemen from Punjab, Haryana, parts of Jammu, they were prepared to come out of retirement and they were saying, what can we do to help? I think that's huge. I mean, if you got the local population on your side, I mean, wanting to fight side by side with you with whatever capability they had, and some of them were well retired. And we had AD gunners coming in like this, that what can we do to help you? I think it only tells you that whether it's Punjab or it's Haryana or Jammu and Kashmir or any other parts of India, this actually rallied a lot of patriotism, especially among our ex-servicemen fraternity from the border states.
Right.
I think it speaks volumes about our national character.
Also, the first aid, one, I need to know about the air defense mechanisms which were used in and around that area. One, that. And the second is our attack out there in just 23 minutes, how we managed to get our targets on the first day.
You're talking with respect specific to?
So this
When
was,
we targeted the terror bases, it was finished, the attack was finished in 23 days. Then when they responded, our air defense mechanisms, how we stopped both.
So, it's like this, that the Nagorno-Karabakh Azerbaijan clash, Russian-Ukraine clash, and even to some extent the Israeli current conflict going on, taught us about the huge capability that drones have. And, we realized that Pakistan, by virtue of its back-end support from Turkey and maybe a northern adversary as well, had a plethora of drones. And we also knew that, in order to take on an effective air defense integrated system that we have, like the Army and the Air Force are integrated in this case, he would have to saturate us. So if you see his concept of employment, he would first send in low altitude, cheaper drones in large numbers to saturate your radars. And they would also force you to open up your radars. So I think it's very important that the Army looked at, not emitting, so that we didn't give out our positions. Because the moment you gave out your emitter position, his next line of drones would come to hit the radar.
So what do you do then? You
switch it on at the appropriate time.
Okay.
So you switch it on when you realize that the target is within your gun range. You switch on the radar intermittently, slew your guns and engage the target. But if you continuously emit, that's what the drone is wanting you to do. Saturate your screen and then bring in someone from the rear, an armed drone, and then hit your radar as a kamikaze drone. So I think that the training that we did, actually we anticipated this, and you won't believe that about maybe on the 26th, 27th and 28th, we did a simulation exercise at the behest of our army chief in the border areas, where we simulated drone attacks on the weapon system.
So sir, April 26th, 27th, you carried out an exercise of a drone attack from Pakistan.
Yeah, it was not from the border, but it was internal, on the border.
Okay.
But we actually wanted our gunners and our operators to actually hone their skill and see how do you detect. So we started off at 5:30 in the morning, if maybe 26 for the first day. So we started 5:30 in the morning, where we had multiple drones coming in to train our people. So that, because if you have a saturation raid, and how do you react, and how do you not switch on your radar till as late as possible? And how does this information go laterally to people? How does the Army Air Defense, once it gets this information, proliferate this information to the infantryman who's there, or to the RT man who's there, so that everybody realizes there is a drone, and if he has a capability and the signals, and if he has a capability to engage that drone, how can he engage it?
So continuing with what Ajit asked, India was getting ready with its war machinery by end of April. We knew that there's going to be some kind of a proactive measure which India is going to take.
So, it's like this, that the air defense is a defensive measure. The air defense is not an offensive. The air defense is something where you protect your own airspace. So, by a trickle method, we gradually built up our air defense right along our western borders. I think so. That's how we actually, got the troops familiar with terrain, because we initially deployed not on a VAVP centric mission that we normally do.
What does that mean?
So what happens is that normally all air defense resources, because ours is a big border, we have about 3,500 border with Pakistan. So you can't have air defense right through. So you have vulnerable points, vulnerable areas which are pre-identified, which are allocated air defense resources. Like if you have an ammunition dump, or you have an airfield, or you have a logistic base, or you have even some population centers, or you have a temple like the Golden Temple. So you predetermine where you want to put these. Now some of these could be at the border. Some of these could be 50 kilometers. Some of them could be in the rear areas of the tactical battle area. So what we did initially is we pushed up as much guns as far forward as possible, because we realized that the efficacy of the guns is the most important against drones.
Okay. No, but look, for Pakistan, it's a thin strip of land. So for them, the depth is not there all that much. We have a greater depth. But yet now you know that the drones also have a longer range. So for us, will we have to go as far back as Delhi now, Haryana, Delhi, because how far are we? So the drone range comes there also, right? So in case of a Sindoor plus situation, if it happens, will we have to have guns along nearby too?
No, so it is like this, that the air defense role has been divided between the Army, Navy and Air Force. To look after India's airspace. And while the Air Force is the primary respondent, but each of us, so the Army looks after the airspace in the rear areas in the TBA, tactical battle area. So we look after the entire TBA. The Air Force looks after rear air defense. So major refineries, major cities like Delhi, they would all come under the gambit of the Air Force air defense. So assuming that you have an effective identification system in place, like a good radar system in place, which is capable of detecting these drones, and you have a reasonably good engagement in a couple of tiers of defense. So you have a gun system on the first tire, maybe at 3 kilometers, then you got something at 10 kilometers, and then you have a leaker which comes through. To be very unfortunate. But assuming that you have multiple tires, it is not sequential, but the best weapon takes on the drone. So I don't think there is fear to areas in depth. I think the air defense of the country between the Air Force and us proved that in the 2-3 days of conflict, in spite of the huge barrage of drones that came pan-western borders, we have not really had civil casualties.
But they did use not just cheap drones, they used Barak, Shapar and the others too, right? So how did we take those down?
So, it is like this, that...
And who did?
Yeah, so every weapon system, whether it's a gun or a missile, a V-SHORAD, a shoulder-fired missile, or the Akash indigenous weapon system, or the MR SAM, they all have a certain altitude of operation. So, like the guns have an altitude of between 1.8 to 2 kilometers. And then you have the V-SHORAD, the next level, go up to 3.5 kilometers. So, then you have the Akash, which can go up to 18 kilometers. The MR SAM, which goes up to 14 kilometers. The S-400 goes up to 18 kilometers. So, depending on the target which was being picked up and the cost, you realize if a plane is coming, then it's the S-400. If it's an AVAX, it's an S-400. If it's a smaller drone like a UCAV, then an S-400 would be too expensive to use. So, then you use the MR SAM or use the Akash, and it still comes closer, then you use the gun. So the altitude of ingress decides the best weapon system. And in an automated system like the Akashti that we have currently, it's a fantastic system. It is still in the process of rolling out, but it has a system of between the ISCCS of the Air Force and the Akashti of the Army. It ensures an effective resource allocation and an effective weapon allocation.